50 years after a federal judge ordered Boston public schools to desegregate, the system continues to mostly benefit white students while leaving generations of Black and Latino children behind. That is the subject of a new series from the Boston Globe looking back at 5 decades of busing. Melissa Tabodada, editor of the Globe's Great Divide education team, and Kris Hooks, editor of the Globe's Money, Power, Inequality team, join us with a preview. Melissa and Kris, thank you for joining us. The story of busing in Boston is a large, detailed story. For this series, what are some of the angles that you looked at, Melissa?
So we reached out to the original plaintiffs, many of whom had never spoken publicly about their stories, about why they joined the lawsuit. So we have a story about the plaintiffs. We have a story about how student outcomes have changed over the years since busing started. And then we take a look at other things like how are Latino students faring in the district? What is the district teaching about the history of busing?
One story unequivocally says that busing has failed. What does that mean exactly?
So one of the other things that we wanted to do was take a very long look of data of 50 years and slightly before busing as well, to really see the outcomes of Black students, of Latino students, of white students, of Asian students, and see where the issues still are. We still see today, dropout rates, graduation rates. You still see testing over the years are still struggling with Black and Latinos in Boston. So based on all the data, it did not.
Why now, Melissa? Why talk about all of this now?
Well, it is the 50th anniversary of Judge Garrity's decision. Some of these plaintiffs have passed on. Some of them, wanted to weigh in on what they see in BPS and whether or not they feel like their educational pursuits, for equal opportunity improved anything.
What did the plaintiffs tell you?
They unfortunately felt like there wasn't much improvement at all. Some of them had a lot of regret joining the lawsuit. Early on, they left Boston. Some of them left Boston, went out to the suburbs. For those of them who stayed in Boston, stayed in BPS, it was a really long and hard road. They had mixed academic outcomes. And like I said, some of them just really felt regret over their pursuit of equality equaling busing.
The series also looks at schools that were run, basically Black-run schools. What is the story behind that, almost like the HBCU system, or schools for Black people, by Black people? How did that fare?
So I think one of the things to do is look back about a decade before the Garrity decision. Between 63 and 64, there were 2 pivotal protests of sorts by Black students and parents and activists. What happened was thousands of kids protested and walked out of their class. They just didn't show up. And they went to what they called as freedom schools, just for one day in 63 and one day in 64. And that was really a moment for Black parents and Black activists to show, like, these things can happen. Fast forward, decades after that, you start to see a lot more sort of Black-run and Black-operated schools opening up. So you really start to see that as a pivotal moment. But even before that, in the early 19th century, you have Black parents having to take these into their own hands. With opening up schools in the African Meeting House, simply because the schools that helped white students weren't helping the schools that helped Black students.
What about solutions? Did you all find any solutions possible to help BPS, counteract the busing issue?
We spoke to dozens of experts, dozens of parents and students who essentially all came with the same ideas, that they really just want and desire good schools, good quality schools in their own neighborhood. We have a version of busing still today in school choice, which allows parents to decide with their kids what school they want to go to. And sometimes those schools because of their choice, end up being miles away. So you have thousands of kids getting on yellow school buses owned by PBS, and you also have thousands of kids getting on, the MBTA. We sort of examine one kid's commute. It's a near 80-minute commute from Hyde Park to Roxbury just to go to the Dearborn. And that commute, he skips over 2 different BPS schools, and both of them are because he views them as older schools that aren't good. So we still see that today, and the sort of prevailing answer is that we need to find a way to get to neighborhood schools where every single neighborhood has a very good quality school system within it. But, to add to that, we also need to add wraparound services in these schools, because there are factors that happen outside of the school's walls that kids are having to just deal with, right?
When you say wraparound, what do you mean? Wraparound
services, including, essentially helping the outside factors such as poverty, such as, a lack of food, those things that kids and families are lacking inside the schools, since that's where kids are most of the time during their day. So bringing some of those services, even including mental health services inside of a school, to essentially help improve their academic outcomes as well.
This is an incredibly large series. Who are some of the reporters that participated in the fact-finding and storytelling?
Well, we had more than 30 journalists dedicated to this project, so all hands on deck. But the primary reporters were Mike Damiano, Kris Hooks, Milton Valencia,
Amanda McLaren, Ivy Scott, Tiana Woodard,
and Deanna Pan.
So basically an all-star roster of
right.
some fabulous reporters.
Yes, incredible reporting.
Thank you both so much for joining us and for all of your work on this series. Kris Hooks, editor of the Globe's Money, Power, Inequality team, and Melissa Tabodada, editor of the Great Divide Education team. For daily access to Boston Globe Today, all segments and episodes are available on demand in the Boston Globe app by clicking Watch.